What's up, Algebra 1? This is lesson 86. Our objective is how do you calculate the midpoint and distance between 2 points. So let's start off with distance. And just in order to get started with that, is we need to remember the Pythagorean theorem, which is probably one of the best known mathematical theorems of all times. But nonetheless, let's just review it real quick. Remember, if you have a right triangle, meaning where one of the angles is right, a right angle, 90 degrees, you can take one side next to the 90-degree angle. On the other side, if you square both of those, it'll equal to the length of the hypotenuse squared. We call that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we write it like this. Well, if we wanted to solve this for c, we could say that c is equal to the square root of this, because if you take the square root of c squared, you just get c. So c is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared, is what c is equal to. So how can we apply that then if we're talking about the distance between 2 points? I just have drawn two generic points, like on a number line here, or on a coordinate grid. This point I named x1, y1, meaning this is the x and the y coordinate from my first point. This one I named x2, y2, meaning this is the x and the y from my second point. That's why that little subscript has a 2 on it, or a 1 in it. So what we need is we need to kind of draw a triangle. So think about this triangle here. I'm going to just do a little dotted triangle here. I could make this right triangle right here. There's a right angle. And the one I'm looking for is this distance here. The distance between those 2 points. So the first thing I need to do, I guess, is be able to find this length here of the triangle. So notice right here, that corresponds to this point. This is x2. And this side here corresponds to this point right here, which is x1. So this distance is the same as this distance. Well, to find this distance, I just need to take the bigger number and subtract the smaller number, right? So if this was 10 and this was 2, the distance between there would be 8, because I could say 10 minus 2. So the distance, this red distance, is x2 minus x1. And by x2 and x1, I actually mean y2 and y1. This is y2, y1. So y2 minus y1, sorry. Because these are on the vertical axis. I don't know what I was thinking here. Then I need to find this length here. So this length right here is x1, and this length right here is x2. So the distance between them is going to be the further one minus the shorter one. So that distance is going to be x2 minus x1. So now, all I have to do is plug that in to right over here, right? So this one's like A. This one here is like B. This is like C, and then we can find the distance. So it's going to be y2 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus x1 squared. And then take the square root of that. So this is the distance formula. Notice in this case I wrote the x2 minus x1 first. This order doesn't matter because 2 plus 3 is the same thing as 3 plus 2. So you can write it either way. But this is something that you're going to need to know, the distance formula. So start working on committing that to memory. It will be part of your quiz on Friday. Alright, so now we just need to find the distance between these 2 points. So I'm just going to label this. This is going to be my first point. So I'm going to label this x1 and y1. Now here's my second point. So I'm going to label this x2 and y2. So I'm just going to, I label them that way so it makes it easier to plug in up here. So then to find the distance between those 2 points, I'm going to take the square root of, here I have x2, that's right here, 6, minus x1, that's right here. And then square it. Plus, open parentheses, y2, here's y2, oh here's y2, so 4, minus y1, or here's y1, so since the negative I'm going to put it in parentheses, minus 2. And then it's squared. And I just need to take the square root of all of that. So it looks kind of big and scary, but if we take it one step at a time, it's not going to be too bad. So let's look at this part right here. What is 6 minus 3? That's going to be 3. Plus, well, 4 minus the minus 2 is like saying 4 plus 2. So that's going to be 4 plus 2 is 6. And then remember that's squared. Now, 3 squared is 9. 6 squared is 36. 6 times 6 is 36. I just need to add 9 plus 36, which is 45. So the square root of 45 is my answer. So the distance between that is equal to the square root of 45. If we want a decimal, we can use a decimal approximation if we want. Just plugging that in a calculator, this is the same thing about at 6.71. Converting that to two decimal places. Alright, now the other thing we wanted to learn about today was midpoint. And so the midpoint between 2 points is like if you drew a line between them, and you want to find the middle of that line. I'm estimating what it would look like would be about right there. Okay. Now notice, if we just look, let's just look at the y-axis for a second. Here's x1, and here's x2. I keep calling those x's y2 and y1. Notice that this midpoint is right here. It'd be halfway between y2 and y1. So the easiest way to find that would be to find the average of y2 and y1. So if we want to find the average of those, how do you find the average? You just add them up. y1 plus y2, and then divide it by 2. That would give you the y-coordinate of that point. Likewise, here's x1, here's x2, here's the midpoint. Again, it's halfway in between. So if I wanted to find that number, I would say x1 plus x2 and divide it by 2. And that brings us then to our midpoint formula. If you want to find the midpoint between 2 points, x1, y1, and x2, y2, the x-coordinate is going to be the average of the x's. The y-coordinate is going to be the average of the y's. So let's try this once. I'm going to go ahead and just label these x1, y1, x2, y2. Then let's find the averages of the x's. So this is going to be 3 plus 7 divided by 2. And I got that because this is x1 and x2. x1 plus x2 divided by 2. This 3 plus 7 is 10 over 3 over 3. 10 over 2, which is 5. And then let's find the y part. So y1 is 5. y2 is negative 2. So 5 minus 2 is 3. 3 over 2 is, if you wanted to leave this 3 over 2, 1 and 1/2. Or I'm going to go with 1.5, just because that's nice and easy. So the midpoint, the x-coordinate, is going to be 5. The y-coordinate is going to be 1.5. Your homework, if you haven't seen already, is on page 566. You're going to do all the lesson practices, and then 5 more of your choice. Good luck, guys.